Once again to Geeks Not Nerds, the podcast. I'm Captain Logan.
And I am Vince.
Vince, today we're going to revisit a topic we did a couple weeks ago. We were asked a question a couple weeks ago about villains and whether or not they have to be evil to be considered villains. And we did a Geeks Not Nerds on it, and there were a lot of comments and a lot of questions, and it seemed like a topic that we could talk more about. So we thought we would do so, and we'll talk about some of the other villains that were mentioned there, and we'll talk more about the nature of evil itself. Now, Vince, let's jump into a couple of other characters that we didn't talk about when we were doing this.
Right.
One of the big things we said was that a lot of times it's kind of subjective, whether or not characters are evil. Where we think they're evil because of the things they do, but very often they won't actually think they're evil. So an act can be evil, but then it becomes debatable about whether or not the character itself is actually evil. And we were talking a lot about Magneto when we were talking about that. Some other characters were, like I said, mentioned by people in the comments in regards to that. And one of them was Lex Luthor, which I thought was really interesting, because Lex has always been thought of as being kind of a purely evil kind of character by a lot of people, right?
Yeah. I would agree with that.
And yet, in a lot of cases, he doesn't see himself as being evil.
That's interesting. I'll admit I haven't read much with Lex in it, but I've always kind of thought Lex saw himself as evil.
Well, it depends on the incarnation, certainly, but very often, yeah, Lex certainly is really full of himself, and he has giant aspirations, and he sees himself as some sort of modern god, and Superman challenges that. But a lot of times, especially modern versions of Lex Luthor, I would say current comic book Lex is like this to a point, and Smallville Lex was certainly like this, especially earlier on. But the idea being that Lex sees himself as being so brilliant and having such resources that he can single-handedly make the world a better place. And Superman challenges that because Superman is all-powerful physically, and Lex Luthor has all of his resources, and he has his intellect, and he wants to be basically king of everything. And Superman challenges that, but then the question is, why does he want? Why does he want to rule the world? You have characters who want to rule the world, and the ones who just want it because they want it, we might be able to interpret that as evil to a certain degree. But what about the ones that are like Lex, especially again more modern Lex, who want to take over the world because they think they can make it better than it is? What about the countries that were better off with a dictator than when later on they were ruled by a group of people and they fell apart?
Well, would they be evil? That's a good question, I suppose. See, I always just saw Lex Luthor as an evil guy because he's on this ego trip and he thinks he's better than everybody else, and he looks down on the rest of humanity. That's the way I always saw him. Mm-hmm. But
and he takes advantage of people, and he threatens people, and and a lot of times your especially your corporate tycoon type Lex Luthor, and this was certainly the way Lionel Luthor was portrayed in Smallville before Lex kind of became that. Is that he doesn't have friends. He just has people who are a means to an end, and he puts an angle and a spin on it to where they think that they're his friend until he wants something from them.
See, if everybody is just a means to an end to you, then wouldn't that make you evil in some way? I mean, because I can't sit here and just say he can't. Well, maybe he doesn't see himself as evil. Well, maybe not. Maybe he just doesn't see himself as human. So therefore,
he's above that kind of morality. in his own mind.
So therefore, does he really care that he's helping these lesser beings?
Yeah, a lot of times it seems like he feels like people aren't smart enough to take care of themselves, so they need somebody like him to make the big decisions for them. Things like, and when we're talking about comic book, very often it's big, grandiose things that would really happen in real life. But things like there's a bunch of meteors coming toward the Earth. And I think this is a story that was done. I think maybe even recently, where there's a bunch of meteors coming toward the Earth. Lex has the resources and the know-how; he can stop them. Superman could have also, but he's not around, so Lex has to do it. But nobody else could have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And so then it's like, well, yeah, he sees people as a means to the end, to an end, and yes, he thinks he's greater than everyone. And yet, if he puts himself in a certain morality where he is better than everyone, and those people need someone like him. In his mind, they need a leader. He's the only one who can do it, and so it doesn't matter what little people he has to step on, because it's gonna benefit mankind as a whole. And we mentioned this in our GNN on this too, where it gets sticky talking about evil, because a lot of times you end up with characters who change the rules of morality.
I mean, it's like looking at Ozymandias from Watchmen.
Which was on my list, and that's one that someone asked us to talk about also. Or mentioned here, yeah.
I mean, you get right down to it, he does, and at least in the comic book, in my opinion, he does help humanity in some way.
Right.
But he kills loads of people doing it. So, in a way, that's exactly what Lex Luthor is doing, only Lex feels that he's above the rest of the people, and Ozymandias, I think, feels like he's just the instrument of change.
Yeah, and the scary thing is that it all really boils down to basic philosophy, where it really very much depends, especially when we're talking about this like loosely, where we're not talking about this is as if it were actually happening. It boils down to: do you believe in the ends justifying the means, or do you believe in a straight morality? You should always do this, and you should never do this, no matter what the outcome is. And if you believe that way, if you believe that there are morally things you should always do, no matter what might happen, then those people are evil to you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look at a guy like Rorschach, who, and this dichotomy that you're saying right here, is perfectly embodied between Rorschach and Ozymandias.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's about. Yeah, and it's really fun to think about it hypothetically, and it's not as much fun to think about it when it actually happens.
Yeah, because there's a lot of death there. But Rorschach will kill a guy. I think he killed a guy in a more interesting way in the comic book. But let's talk about the movie since it's fresh in my mind.
Okay, sure. Either way,
he hacks a guy to pieces with a meat cleaver. And yet he has a problem with Ozymandias killing lots of people. Now, maybe there's just the brutality of it makes him seem like a hypocrite. But then again, I think it's the motivation, or not so much the motivation. I think it's the recipient of the death.
That's exactly what it is. It's not about how it's done. Mm-hmm. And in fact, he believes so much in talking about Rorschach. He believes so much in evil people, people who do, in his mind, morally reprehensible things. Not only deserve to die, but they deserve to feel it. Mm-hmm. And the difference is that Ozymandias kills whoever's in his way.
Yeah,
that's different to Rorschach than what Rorschach is doing.
Well, what's interesting, I mean, I don't even think it's necessarily in the way. I think he strategically killed innocent people. Exactly. Which makes him a mass murderer. Right. Which makes him evil in the eyes of Rorschach, but he feels like he did something necessary. That's even interesting. Maybe in a way he would deem himself evil. Who would? Ozymandias.
Well, I think in some ways Rorschach even maybe considers himself a necessary evil. In some ways, sort of. You know what I mean? Where I don't know, maybe not, but no, probably not. Now that I think about it, well, because the thing is, I mean, like Rorschach, like anyone else, would love to live in a world where people didn't have to die, but he feels like he does not live in that kind of a world, and Veidt thinks he can create a utopia, and Rorschach doesn't think it's worth it. So to Rorschach, the lesser of two evils is let people like him kill the people who deserve to be killed.
There's a movie that I think we should watch. I've seen it, so that's why I'm bringing it up.
Okay.
But it's called Frailty. Have you seen it?
Mm-mm.
Stars Bill Paxton. And what's interesting about this movie is Bill Paxton thinks he's on a mission from God, effectively, and he's killing so-called demons. Well, his demons are people, or actual people.
Right.
He sees these people as being something other than human, and he goes out there and he kills these people. Now, he to some extent has evidence that these people are criminals or just morally repugnant people. So, and then we get the idea that there's some sort of justification. He has a higher power of doing this, so therefore he has license. But is he evil? Well, watch the movie and find out and see what the movie says. But assuming that he's just a crazy dude, the answer is yes. In my opinion, I think that in a way you are evil. If you're committing acts of brutality, if you're...
Yeah, I think... sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I think most importantly, how you feel about it has to factor into this, right? I believe, and this may step on toes. I don't know. I think it's possible to kill someone and not be a bad person.
There's ideas like what do you call it? Self-defense. First of all, let's get that out of the way.
Well,
that's fine.
Right, absolutely. But what I mean is, okay, let me say it this way. I think it's possible to murder someone and not be a bad person.
Well, there is the whole idea of capital punishment. So,
but I'm not even talking about that. I'm saying like purposefully. Purposefully, someone does something to me that I don't like. I kill that person, and not that I would ever do this, but
don't get the wrong idea, guys.
But okay, let's just say there's a scenario where somebody hurt my kid, and I without thinking, I jumped the gun. I had a huge temper. I went over to talk to the guy. Things came out of hand, and I stabbed him, or I shot him, or I beat him over the head with a baseball bat, and he died.
A crime of passion.
A crime of passion. And immediately, an hour later, felt completely terribly guilty about it, and I regretted it for the rest of my life. Am I evil? Am I a bad person?
I think a person can do something evil.
I think the act was evil.
Yeah.
I think the evil was in the act, but not necessarily in the person. And I think the person still has. I mean, your regular life is essentially over at that point. But I mean, you still can in some way redeem yourself from this.
Now, when you said it depends on how you feel about it, I thought you were meaning how the audience feels about it, whether or not they agree with the idea of capital punishment. And something to that effect.
There's that too. I was mostly just talking about the person doing it. Yeah.
Whether
or not
the killer feels.
I think it's important. I think that's important to note
because I think we can impose our morality on this. And
sure.
I'm going to go ahead and impose a morality. I mean, if you look at Rorschach in a way is evil.
In a way, yeah.
He's killing people without remorse.
But then again, so's Punisher.
Yeah, and the Punisher's evil in my opinion.
Sure.
This man.
Then again, so is the Huntress in a way.
So, I think there's the characters that are the most fun to read are people who are just a little evil and just a little good.
And I think
country, little rock and roll.
Ozymandias must be evil because he does not now. He doesn't regret what he's done in the sense that he feels it's necessary. Now he says, and I think he says this both in the comic and in the film. He says that he made himself feel every death. He made himself see the faces of every person he killed, and that makes him somewhat of a more sympathetic character. That you know what I mean? Like that makes us appreciate him more because he's still human, but what he's done is so twisted.